"Officer, this is a misunderstanding." William Carter said it with the calm voice of a man used to being believed, but the blue and red lights sweeping across his face outside the restaurant did not care how many buildings carried his name. Rain misted over the valet lane in front of Magnolia Reserve, one of Atlanta's most exclusive restaurants, turning the black pavement into a mirror of flashing color and expensive fear. Behind the glass doors, wealthy guests hovered at a safe distance, phones half-raised, mouths slightly open, pretending they were concerned while making sure they were not too close to the problem. William Carter stood near the curb in a charcoal overcoat, 44 years old, white, billionaire founder of Carter Sterling Holdings, his jaw tight, his leather wallet clutched in one hand, as Officer Brandon Hale asked him to explain why another guest had reported a missing document bag. 2 hours earlier, every person inside Magnolia Reserve had treated William like gravity. Conversations bent toward him. Managers smiled harder when he passed. Investors laughed before his jokes were finished. His daughter, Grace Carter, a quiet 16-year-old in a navy dress, had sat beside him in the private dining room, watching him move through power like it belonged to his bloodstream. And moving around that same table with a tray of water glasses and a practiced smile was Denise Parker, 25 years old, black, tired from a 10-hour shift, and invisible in the familiar way service workers become invisible when money starts speaking. William had not shouted at her during dinner. He had not needed to. His disrespect came wrapped in manners sharp enough to cut without leaving a mark. "Just place it there," he had said without looking at her. "No, not that side. The other side. Details matter." When Denise corrected the placement quietly, he smiled toward his investors and added, "Good help is rare when people stop taking pride in simple work." The table chuckled softly. Grace did not. Denise heard everything, felt all of it, and still poured the water without spilling a drop. That was her gift. Not silence. Control. She had learned control growing up in South Atlanta, where being misunderstood could change an entire night before anyone checked the facts. Her grandmother used to say, "When people rush to judge, be the person who remembers what really happened." So Denise remembered. She remembered the guest in the gray sport coat setting a black leather document bag beside William's chair. She remembered William placing his own black leather wallet near the edge of the table after paying for an additional bottle of wine. She remembered the guest leaving early after a tense phone call, distracted, lifting the wrong item as he passed behind the chairs. She remembered because nobody ever expected the waitress to be the witness. Now, outside in the misting rain, that same guest was pointing toward William from beneath the awning, insisting his documents had been taken. The restaurant manager, Paul Mercer, stood near the entrance with panic in his eyes, whispering to staff to stay inside and let security handle it. The investors stepped back. The valet attendants looked away. Even Grace stood frozen behind the glass, scared and confused, watching her father become smaller under the flashing lights. Denise had just finished clocking out when she saw the scene through the lobby window. Officer Hale was calm, professional, asking questions in an even voice, but the crowd around them was already writing its own version of the story. Denise felt the old warning rise in her chest. This is how truth gets buried. Not by one lie, but by 20 people deciding silence is safer. Paul caught her moving toward the door and grabbed her attention with a sharp whisper. "Denise, do not get involved. This is above your pay grade." She looked past him at William Carter, the man who had not bothered to look her in the eye all night. Then she looked at the officer, the guest, the wallet, the space where the wrong bag had disappeared. Her hand tightened around her coat. "No," she said softly. "It is exactly where I was standing." Denise Parker stepped past the manager before fear could talk her out of doing the right thing. The lobby doors opened with a soft hiss, and the wet Atlanta air touched her face as blue and red light swept across the entrance of Magnolia Reserve. She kept both hands visible at her sides, not rushing, not raising her voice, not turning the moment into something louder than it needed to be. Officer Brandon Hale looked toward her immediately, alert but calm. William Carter turned too, and for the first time that entire evening, his eyes actually focused on her face. Not her tray, not her uniform, her face. "Officer," Denise said clearly, stopping several feet away, "I served that private room tonight. I saw who picked up the wrong item." The words cut through the valet lane like a clean line through fog. The guest in the gray sport coat stiffened beneath the awning. Paul Mercer appeared in the doorway behind her, pale with panic, mouthing her name as if he could pull her back with one silent warning. The investors stayed inside near the glass, watching from safety. Grace Carter pressed one hand lightly against the window, her expression caught between fear and hope. Officer Hale turned his body toward Denise with professional attention. "You witnessed the exchange?" "Yes, sir," Denise answered. The document bag and Mr. Carter's wallet were both black leather, both placed near the same side of the table. The guest in the gray jacket left early after a phone call. He picked up the larger black leather item as he walked behind Mr. Carter's chair. The guest scoffed immediately. "That is not what happened." Denise did not look at him. She kept her voice steady because the truth did not need volume when it had details. He held his phone in his left hand and the bag in his right. He paused near the hostess stand to check a message before going outside. Officer Hale's eyes narrowed slightly, not with suspicion toward her, but with interest in the precision of her memory. "And Mr. Carter?" "He remained seated for another 12 minutes, Denise said. Then he picked up his own wallet from the table after signing the check. William's jaw loosened slightly. Shock moved across his face slowly, not because she had spoken, but because she had noticed everything he had not noticed her noticing. The rain mist thickened over the valet lane, while passing cars hissed along Peachtree Street. Someone near the entrance lowered a phone. The story they had been preparing to record no longer fit the facts arriving in front of them. The guest in gray lifted his hands in frustration. "This is ridiculous. She is just trying to protect a famous customer." Denise finally looked at him then. Her expression did not harden. It settled. "No, sir. I am trying to tell the truth about a table I served for 2 hours." That sentence changed the temperature outside the restaurant. Not dramatically, not loudly, but enough. Officer Hale turned toward Paul Mercer. "Does the restaurant have lobby cameras?" Paul swallowed. "Yes. Front entrance, hostess stand, private hall, and valet desk." "Good," the officer said. "Please make that footage available." Paul nodded quickly and disappeared back inside, suddenly eager to cooperate now that cooperation had become official. William looked toward Denise, as if words were forming and failing behind his eyes. Maybe thank you. Maybe sorry. Maybe both. But Denise was not waiting for gratitude. She had not stepped outside for him alone. She had stepped outside because she knew how fast a misunderstanding could become a label, how fast a label could become a headline, how fast a room full of silent people could help the wrong version survive. Grace came out through the lobby doors moments later, staying close to the entrance. "Dad," she said softly. William glanced back at her, and something in his face changed. The billionaire mask slipped. For a second, he was not a man with buildings and board seats. He was a father realizing his daughter had just watched strangers decide who he was before the truth finished speaking. Officer Hale kept his tone even. "Mr. Carter, please stay nearby while we review the footage." William nodded, no longer arguing. The guest in gray looked toward the valet stand, then toward the street, his confidence shrinking under the weight of Denise's details. Denise stepped back toward the door, ready to disappear now that she had done what she came to do. But before she reached the entrance, William spoke her name. Not sharply, not carelessly, carefully. "Denise." She stopped. Rainlight shimmered across the pavement between them. William looked at her as if seeing the entire dinner again. Every clipped instruction, every dismissive remark, every moment he had treated her like background noise. His voice came out lower than before. "Why would you help me?" Denise looked at him for a long second. "Because the truth should not depend on how someone treated the person who saw it." Then she walked back inside, leaving him standing beneath the flashing lights with that sentence doing what no investor, no officer, and no headline could have done. It made him look at himself. Inside Magnolia Reserve, the restaurant no longer felt like a place for celebration. The dining room lights were still warm, the bar still polished, the soft jazz still moving beneath the low conversation of wealthy guests. But the mood had shifted into something watchful and uneasy. Denise Parker walked back through the glass doors with rain still shining on the shoulders of her coat, and every person near the lobby pretended not to stare. They had all seen her step outside. They had all heard enough through the glass to understand she had changed the direction of the night. And still, most of them looked away. That was what Denise expected. People liked truth better after someone else carried the risk of saying it. Paul Mercer hurried toward the security office with Officer Hale following behind him, while William Carter remained outside beneath the awning with his daughter Grace standing nearby. The guest in the gray sport coat had stopped speaking loudly now. His confidence had thinned into restless glances and folded arms. Denise could see him through the window, shifting his weight from one expensive shoe to the other as if memory itself had become inconvenient. She turned toward the staff hallway, hoping to gather her things and leave before anyone asked her to explain courage she did not feel. But Grace entered the lobby before Denise reached the door. The teenager paused near the hostess stand, rainlight reflecting in her eyes. "Miss Parker." Denise stopped immediately. "Yes." Grace looked back toward her father, then toward Denise again. "Thank you for helping him." The words were simple, but they carried a weight Denise had not expected. She softened slightly. "I only told the officer what I saw." Grace nodded, but her face remained serious. "A lot of people saw things tonight. They did not all say anything." Denise had no answer for that, not one that would make the world sound fair. So she gave the girl the truth gently. "Sometimes people are afraid of getting involved." Grace looked down at her hands. "Were you?" Denise almost smiled, tired and honest. "Yes." That seemed to matter to Grace more than any brave answer would have. Outside, Officer Hale and Paul returned from the security room. Paul's face had changed completely. The panic was still there, but now it had been joined by embarrassment. Officer Hale held a small tablet displaying the lobby footage, and his tone remained professional as he addressed the guest in gray. Through the glass, Denise could not hear every word, but she did not need to. She saw the guest's shoulders drop, saw William turn slowly toward the screen, saw Grace inhale, saw Officer Hale gesture toward the moment on video when the wrong item had been taken by mistake at the hostess stand. Not theft, not scandal, not a billionaire abusing privilege, just a hurried man, a black leather document bag, and a wallet that looked similar from the wrong angle. Truth, finally given a camera to stand beside it. The guest in gray looked smaller as he accepted the document bag from the valet supervisor, his apology directed more toward the officer than toward William. That told Denise plenty. Some people apologize to authority because authority could cost them something, not because conscience had found them. William said little. He simply listened, then nodded once. But when he looked through the glass at Denise, she saw something unfamiliar in his expression. Not pride, not irritation, recognition, the kind that arrives late and carries shame with it. Paul returned to the lobby first, stopping near Denise with a strained smile. "Well," he said quietly, "good eye." Denise looked at him. "You told me not to get involved." His smile faded. "I was trying to protect the restaurant." "I know," she said. "That is what scared me." Paul had no answer. Outside, the flashing lights finally dimmed. The officer spoke once more with William, then stepped back toward his patrol car. The crowd began dissolving, disappointed that the night had become reasonable instead of dramatic. Denise reached for her coat from the staff hook, exhaustion settling into her bones. She wanted home. Dry socks. Silence that did not ask her to carry it. But before she could slip into the service hallway, William Carter came through the doors with Grace beside him, water shining on his overcoat, the billionaire mask cracked just enough for humility to show through. William Carter stepped inside Magnolia Reserve with Grace at his side, and the lobby seemed to rearrange itself around the silence. The soft jazz from the dining room kept playing, but nobody listened to it anymore. Guests near the bar glanced over their glasses, then quickly looked away. Hosts pretended to adjust menus. Investors studied the rain-streaked windows like Atlanta traffic had suddenly become fascinating. William had entered this restaurant hours earlier as the man everyone wanted near their table. Now he stood in the lobby as a man who had just been defended by the person he had dismissed all night. Denise Parker held her coat in one hand near the staff hallway, her shift finished, her patience almost gone. She expected a quick thank you, maybe a polished sentence built for dignity, something wealthy men used when humility felt unfamiliar. But William did not speak immediately. He looked at the floor first, then at Grace, then finally at Denise. His voice came out lower than before. "You were right." Denise waited. The words alone were not enough. Not after the dinner. Not after the jokes. Not after the way he had spoken around her, as if her presence did not require respect. William seemed to understand that, because his jaw tightened with the discomfort of someone walking toward an apology without any of his usual armor. "I should have paid attention to you before I needed you," he said. Grace looked at him quietly, and somehow her silence made him continue. "At dinner, I was dismissive, condescending." He paused. "Wrong." The lobby grew still around them. Paul Mercer stood several feet away pretending to review a reservation screen, while clearly hearing every word. Denise kept her expression calm. "You were not the only one," she said. William nodded slowly. "No, but I was the loudest without raising my voice." That sentence landed differently because it was true. Disrespect did not always need volume. Sometimes it wore perfect tailoring and spoken instructions. Grace stepped closer to Denise then. "My dad talks about leadership all the time," she said softly, not cruelly, just honestly. "Tonight you showed me what it looks like." William closed his eyes briefly, and Denise saw the sentence reach him deeper than anything the officer or the guest could have said. A daughter's disappointment was not public relations. It was a mirror. Outside, Officer Hale's patrol car pulled away from the curb, leaving only the soft gold of valet lights and rain reflecting on the pavement. The misunderstanding was over. The truth had been verified, but the moral weight of the night remained. William reached into his coat, then stopped himself, as if realizing a tip would insult the moment before it honored it. His hand lowered. "I want to make this right," he said. Denise shook her head gently. "You cannot fix respect after the fact with money." William absorbed that without defending himself. That mattered. "Then tell me how," he said. Denise looked toward the dining room where the private table still waited, polished and empty now, with folded napkins and half-finished glasses of wine. "Start by seeing people when you do not need anything from them." The words settled into the lobby like rain after thunder. Paul lowered his eyes. Grace smiled faintly, proud and sad at the same time. William looked at Denise for a long moment, and for once his expression carried no command inside it. Only recognition. "I can start there," he said. Denise slipped into her coat. Her feet hurt. Her hair had loosened slightly from the long shift. She wanted nothing more than to go home, wash the restaurant air from her skin, and sleep before morning bills found her again. But as she turned toward the employee exit, Grace called softly, "Miss Parker." Denise stopped. Grace walked over and held out a small folded note. "This is not money," she said quickly. "It is just my number, in case you ever need someone to say what they saw too." Denise took the note carefully, surprised by the sincerity in the girl's eyes. "Thank you, Grace." William watched the exchange with a quietness that felt new on him. Denise walked out through the staff corridor into the damp Atlanta night, not knowing that by morning, the billionaire she had corrected would return with more than an apology. He would return with proof that one honest witness had changed him enough to change her life. The next morning came gray and soft over Atlanta, with rain still clinging to the windows of Denise Parker's small apartment like the city had not finished rinsing off the night before. She woke before her alarm because worry had always been better at keeping time than any phone. For a few quiet seconds, she forgot about Magnolia Reserve, the flashing lights, William Carter's stunned expression, and the way everyone had watched her tell the truth. Then the memory returned all at once, heavy and bright. She sat up on the edge of her bed, feet touching the cool floor, and looked around the one-bedroom apartment she shared with responsibility. A stack of bills sat beside a chipped coffee mug on the kitchen counter. Her work shoes waited near the door, still damp at the soles. A grocery list was pinned to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a peach. Ordinary morning. Ordinary pressure. But something inside Denise felt slightly different, as if one part of her had stood taller overnight and refused to sit back down. She checked her phone while the coffee brewed. No missed calls from Magnolia Reserve. No angry messages from Paul Mercer. No warning that she had overstepped, embarrassed a client, or damaged the restaurant's reputation by telling an officer what actually happened. That silence should have relieved her. Instead, it made her uneasy. Service workers knew that consequences did not always arrive quickly. Sometimes they waited until payroll. Sometimes they appeared as fewer shifts, colder managers, smaller sections, polite punishments that never said their true name. Denise dressed in jeans and a simple sweater before her afternoon shift, tying her hair back while looking at herself in the bathroom mirror. She thought about William's question beneath the valet lights. "Why would you help me?" She still did not fully know how to explain it. Maybe because her grandmother's voice was stronger than his disrespect. Maybe because Grace had been watching. Maybe because truth deserved at least one witness who did not negotiate with fear. By noon, Denise was walking toward the bus stop with her umbrella folded under one arm when her phone buzzed. Magnolia Reserve. Her stomach tightened immediately. She answered with the calm voice workers use when they are already preparing to apologize for something they should not regret. "This is Denise." Paul Mercer cleared his throat on the other end. Denise, are you able to come in early today? She stopped beneath a dripping oak tree. Is something wrong? A pause. Too long. Mr. Carter is here. The street noise seemed to thin around her. William Carter? Yes, Paul said. And his daughter. They asked for you specifically. Denise looked down at the wet sidewalk, her grip tightening around the phone. Part of her wanted to turn around. Part of her wanted to keep walking and let powerful people have their conversations without her. But curiosity, caution, and something sharper pulled her forward. 30 minutes later, she entered Magnolia Reserve through the staff door, expecting tension. Instead, the kitchen had gone strangely quiet. Louise from prep nodded toward the private dining room. They are waiting in there. Denise removed her coat slowly and tied on her white apron because uniform gave her hands something familiar to do. When she stepped into the private room, William Carter stood from his chair immediately. Grace sat beside him, hands folded, eyes hopeful. On the table rested no champagne, no investors, no polished performance. Only a folder, a business card, and 2 cups of coffee. William looked different in daylight. Less untouchable, more awake. Denise, he said, and this time her name sounded like respect, not recognition arriving late. Thank you for coming. She stayed near the doorway. Mr. Carter, if this is about last night, I already told the officer what I saw. I know, he said quietly. That is why I am here. Grace glanced at her father, then at Denise, as if silently urging him not to ruin the moment with too many executive words. William opened the folder and turned it toward Denise, but he did not push it across the table like a man making an offer. He waited. I spent most of last night thinking about what you said, he told her. See people before you need them. Denise held his gaze. And William exhaled slowly. And I realized my company has a foundation that claims to help communities, but I do not have enough people inside it who actually understand what communities need. He tapped the folder gently. Carter Sterling Foundation is launching a hospitality and neighborhood safety initiative in Atlanta. I want you to interview for a paid coordinator role. Full benefits, training included. And if you want to finish school, the foundation will cover tuition through the program. Denise did not move. For a second, even breathing felt too loud. Grace smiled softly. William added, this is not a reward for saving me embarrassment. It is an opportunity one should have known someone like you deserved before last night forced me to notice. Denise looked at the folder, then at the man who had once corrected the side of a water glass without seeing the woman holding it. The room felt quiet enough for her grandmother's voice to enter. When people rush to judge, be the person who remembers what really happened. Denise finally stepped closer, but she did not sit yet. I will read it, she said, and I will decide for myself. William nodded. That is fair. Grace's smile widened. And for the first time since the flashing lights outside Magnolia Reserve, Denise felt the night before changing shape. It was no longer only a memory of fear. It was becoming a doorway. Denise Parker sat across from William Carter and Grace in the same private dining room where, less than 24 hours earlier, she had been treated like part of the background. Morning light replaced the candle glow now, spilling across the white tablecloth and making the space feel less powerful, more honest. The folder rested in front of her, unopened for a few seconds longer, because sometimes a door looks too much like a test when life has taught you to expect disappointment behind opportunity. William did not rush her. That mattered. He sat with both hands visible on the table, no phone, no assistant, no investors waiting to applaud him. Just a billionaire trying, awkwardly but sincerely, to become the kind of man his daughter could respect after seeing him fail. Denise finally opened the folder. The first page described a coordinator position with Carter Sterling Foundation, focused on community hospitality training, neighborhood safety partnerships, and emergency response education for service workers across Atlanta. The salary made her blink once. Full health insurance, paid training, tuition assistance toward a degree in hospitality management, public administration, or business, flexible scheduling for school. It was the kind of page Denise had once imagined other people receiving, people with connections, people who did not ride buses in the rain with damp shoes and grocery math running through their heads. She read slowly, not because she doubted the words, but because she wanted to make sure they were real before her heart believed them. Grace watched quietly, hands wrapped around her coffee cup. William waited until Denise looked up before speaking. There is also something else, he said. Denise's expression sharpened slightly. She had learned that generous offers from powerful people often came with invisible strings. William saw the caution and nodded as if he deserved it. "It is not a condition," he said. "It is an apology." He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a handwritten letter on the table. Not printed, not prepared by legal. Handwritten. "I wrote it last night," he said. "I will not read it to you unless you want me to. It is yours." Denise looked at the envelope, then at him. "Why?" William's eyes dropped briefly toward the table. "Because I realize saying sorry in a lobby is easy when everyone is watching. Writing it down when no one is applauding is harder." Grace looked at her father with quiet pride, and that expression seemed to steady him. Denise picked up the envelope but did not open it yet. "I appreciate that," she said carefully. "But I need to be clear about something. I do not want charity." William nodded immediately. "I know. And I do not want to become some story your foundation uses to look better." "You will not." His answer came quickly, then he corrected himself. "No. Let me say that better. You should have control over how your name is used, if it is used at all." Denise studied him for a long moment. That was the first answer that sounded like he had actually listened. Grace leaned forward then. "I told him that part," she said. Denise smiled despite herself. "Good." William almost smiled too, but the humility stayed. "She has been correcting me since breakfast." "Somebody should," Denise said softly. For the first time, a small laugh moved through the room without cruelty attached to it. Then Denise looked back down at the folder. "I will interview," she said. William's face shifted with relief. "That is all I am asking. No special treatment," Denise added. "If I am not qualified, say that." "You are qualified to be considered," William replied. "And I suspect you are qualified for more than that." Denise closed the folder gently. Outside the private room, Magnolia Reserve staff prepared for another day of wealthy lunches and polished service. Plates clinked. Chairs moved. Life went on as if last night had not cracked something open. But inside that quiet room, the balance had changed. Denise had not accepted rescue. She had accepted a chance. There was a difference. Rescue made someone else the hero of your life. A chance handed you the pen. She stood, holding the folder and the letter against her chest. "Then I will come prepared," she said. William stood as well, this time not because power demanded it, but because respect did. Grace stood beside him, smiling fully now. And as Denise walked back toward the staff hallway, white apron still tied over her black uniform, she felt the strange weight of a future beginning before she had fully agreed to believe in it. By late afternoon, the rain had finally stopped, but Atlanta still looked washed and uncertain through the windows of Magnolia Reserve. Denise Parker moved through her shift with the folder from Carter Sterling Foundation tucked safely in her locker and the handwritten letter still unopened inside her bag. She had read the job description twice during her break, then once more in the restroom with the door locked, not because she doubted the words, but because hope had to be handled carefully when life had trained you to expect conditions. Every table she served felt different now. Not easier, not magical. The same guests still asked for substitutions without looking up. The same managers still worried more about reviews than workers. The same polished rooms still ran on invisible labor. But Denise was different inside it. She noticed how she stood a little straighter when carrying plates, how her voice held a little more weight when answering questions, how the future no longer felt like a hallway with every door locked. Near 6 o'clock, Paul Mercer called her into the small office beside the wine storage room. The walls smelled faintly of cork and printer paper. He sat behind his desk looking uncomfortable in a way Denise had never seen before. "I wanted to talk about last night," he said. Denise folded her hands in front of her apron. "All right." Paul rubbed the back of his neck. "I told you not to get involved." "You did. I was wrong." The words came out stiff, but they came out. Denise waited. Paul sighed. "I thought I was protecting the restaurant. What I was really doing was protecting myself from inconvenience." That honesty surprised her more than the apology itself. He looked toward the hallway where servers passed with trays and order slips. "The officer called this morning to thank the restaurant for cooperating. Mr. Carter also made it very clear that your statement prevented a much worse misunderstanding." Denise did not answer immediately. She was tired of praise that arrived only after proof. Still, accountability mattered when it appeared without being forced. "I appreciate you saying that," she said. Paul nodded. "I also want you to know your shifts are secure. No retaliation. No quiet punishment. Nothing like that." Denise looked at him sharply. He understood the look and lowered his eyes. "The fact that you had to wonder says enough." Silence filled the small office. Not hostile. Necessary. Finally, Denise said, workers notice more than people think. Paul nodded. I am starting to understand that. When Denise returned to the dining room, Grace Carter was waiting near the hostess stand. She wore jeans now instead of the navy dress from the night before, her hair tied back, looking less like a billionaire's daughter and more like a teenager trying to do something brave without making it awkward. My dad is in the car, Grace said quickly. He did not want to make your shift weird. Denise almost smiled. That is progress. Grace laughed softly. Then she handed Denise a small envelope. This is from me. Denise opened it carefully. Inside was a note written in neat blue ink. Thank you for showing me that telling the truth is not always loud. Sometimes it just means not walking away. Denise read it once, then again. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. Grace looked nervous. I know it is not much. It is plenty, Denise said. Grace's face softened with relief. Through the front windows, Denise saw William's black car parked along the curb, but he stayed inside, giving her the space he had failed to give the night before. That mattered too. Not everything changed in one apology. Not every powerful man became good because shame found him under flashing lights. But sometimes the first sign of change was simple: distance, patience, listening, a willingness not to center himself. Denise folded Grace's note and placed it carefully in her apron pocket. Then she looked around Magnolia Reserve, at the tables, the glassware, the guests, the servers moving like quiet machinery beneath warm lights. For years, this room had taught her to be useful without being seen. Now she understood something better. Being useful was not the same as being small. And the next time life asked her to choose between silence and truth, she already knew which voice would answer. The interview took place 3 days later in a glass conference room on the 26th floor of Carter Sterling Holdings, where Atlanta stretched below the windows in clean lines of traffic, steel, and sunlight. Denise Parker arrived 15 minutes early wearing the best blazer she owned over a simple blouse, her hair pulled back neatly, Grace's note folded inside her purse, and William Carter's handwritten apology sealed in the same pocket as her bus card. The building lobby had almost swallowed her confidence at first. Marble floors, security desks, elevators that moved without sound, people walking fast with badges, laptops, and the soft urgency of careers already in motion. For one brief second, Denise felt the old voice rise inside her. Maybe this place is not for you. Then she remembered the valet lane, the flashing lights, and the truth standing in the rain with no one else willing to carry it. She signed in at the front desk and lifted her chin. The foundation director, a woman named Helena Price, met her outside the conference room with a warm handshake and an expression that did not feel like charity. That helped. William was not in the room when the interview began. That helped even more. Denise answered questions about customer conflict, neighborhood partnerships, staff training, emergency communication, and trust between local businesses and the communities around them. At first her voice was careful. Then it grew steadier. She spoke about how service workers often see problems before managers do because they stand closest to people in real time. She spoke about how safety is not only about cameras and policies, but about whether workers feel permitted to tell the truth without punishment. She spoke about dignity the way some people speak about strategy, because for Denise, dignity had always been practical. Helena listened without interruption, taking notes slowly. 2 other staff members asked follow-up questions, and Denise answered them without shrinking. By the time the interview ended, the glass room no longer felt like enemy territory. It felt like a place where her life might fit if the door stayed open. Helena closed her folder and smiled. Miss Parker, I do not want to make you wait through a week of unnecessary process. You are the strongest candidate we have seen for this initiative. Denise blinked once, afraid to trust the sentence too quickly. Thank you. We would like to offer you the coordinator position. The words landed softly, but everything inside Denise went still. Not because the job solved every problem. Life was never that simple. But because a room that once would have ignored her had now made space for what she knew. Through the glass wall, she saw William standing far down the hallway with Grace beside him. He did not enter. He did not interrupt. He simply waited, letting the moment belong to her. Denise appreciated that more than she expected. Helena slid the offer packet across the table. Take it home. Read every page. Ask questions. Negotiate anything you need to discuss. Denise looked at the packet, then back at Helena. I will. Outside the conference room, Grace gave her a small thumbs up from the hallway, trying and failing to look casual. Denise laughed softly for the first time all week. William stepped forward only after Helena left. "Congratulations," he said quietly. Denise held the packet against her chest. "I have not accepted yet." He nodded, and there was no offense in it. "Good. You should decide carefully." That answer told her the apology had not been only words. Downstairs, when Denise stepped back into the sunlight, Atlanta looked different. Not easier. Not perfect. Just wider. The same buses moved through the same streets. The same bills waited at home. The same world would still judge too quickly and listen too late. But now Denise carried an offer packet, a handwritten apology, a teenager's note, and the memory of one night when she had refused to let fear make the final decision. She walked toward the bus stop with steady steps, knowing her life had not been rescued by a billionaire. It had been redirected by her own courage, witnessed at last by people who finally understood its worth. Denise Parker accepted the position 2 days later, but she did not announce it like a miracle. There were no balloons, no dramatic phone calls, no instant escape from everything hard. She sat at her kitchen table in South Atlanta with the offer packet spread beside a mug of coffee, her rent notice, Grace Carter's handwritten note, and William Carter's apology letter opened at last. The letter was not perfect. Apologies rarely are when they come from people learning humility after years of being rewarded for pride. But it was specific. He remembered the dinner, the way he had spoken, the way he had failed to see her until he needed her. He wrote that Grace had asked him whether leadership meant being important or being responsible, and that he had not answered quickly enough. Denise read that line 3 times. Then she folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope, not as forgiveness fully finished, but as proof that change had begun somewhere outside the spotlight. On her first day at Carter Sterling Foundation, she arrived early again, wearing the same blazer from the interview and carrying a notebook filled with ideas written in blue ink. Emergency witness training for service workers, clear reporting systems for restaurant staff, partnerships between local businesses and community resource teams, a hotline for workers who saw something concerning but feared losing their jobs. Helena Price listened. The foundation team listened. And for once, Denise did not have to shrink her knowledge into something polite enough for others to ignore. Weeks later, Magnolia Reserve became the pilot site for the first training session. Paul Mercer sat in the front row, uncomfortable but present. Louise asked the first question. Grace attended quietly with her school notebook open, pretending she was only there for extra credit even though everyone knew better. William stood in the back of the room, not at the podium, not in the spotlight, just listening while Denise taught managers and staff how to protect truth before panic rewrote it. She told them, "The person closest to the moment is not always the person with the highest title." The room went still when she said it. Not with fear this time, with understanding. Outside, Atlanta's sunlight poured through the restaurant windows where rain and flashing lights had once turned a misunderstanding into a test of character. Denise looked toward the valet lane for a moment and remembered herself standing there with both hands visible, voice steady, heart pounding, choosing truth for a man who had not earned her kindness. But kindness had never been about what someone earned. It was about who she refused to become. After the session ended, Grace walked up and hugged her gently, then stepped back with embarrassed teenage speed. William approached more slowly. "You changed more than my night," he said. Denise smiled faintly. "No, you changed because you finally listened." He nodded, accepting the correction. That mattered most. Months passed, and the program expanded across Atlanta. Service workers learned their observations had value. Managers learned silence could become liability. Officers and community leaders joined sessions that began with coffee, not suspicion. Denise still took the bus sometimes, still clipped coupons, still called her grandmother every Sunday. Her life did not become easy. It became larger, and that was different. One evening, as she left the foundation office with her notebook under one arm, the city glowing bronze around her, she thought about the night everything changed. A wallet, a document bag, a police light, a restaurant full of people waiting for someone else to speak. She had not known then that one honest sentence could open a future. She had only known the truth was standing alone, and she could not leave it there. That was how justice began for Denise Parker. Not with wealth, not with rescue, not with a billionaire's regret. It began when a waitress who had every reason to stay quiet chose to be the witness everyone else needed.